Hi, welcome to Peak Moment. I'm Janaea Donaldson, and my guest today is Joanna Gabriel, who's the Post Carbon Ashland, Oregon coordinator. Thanks for joining me.
Yes, thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, you are not just doing this. You've been looking at how do groups function and how do we nurture ourselves and how do we look at the insides, not just the outsides of the change ahead and happening in this culture. So I want to start there. I want to start with your reflections on kind of what are the times we are in? What are we facing?
Oh, the times we're in are huge. They're huge, and it feels like the first challenge we have is it a challenge or is it an opportunity? And I think we're straddling both. I think we're straddling both in every moment of now. And with the whole issues of peak oil, our having to find renewable resources for the future, all the things we're needing to do to look forward to the future are very, very important. And what I've come to realize is the most important issue for me is who am I in relationship to it?
Well, you're talking not only about renewables, we're talking about living a different way.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yes, what we're challenged with, the opportunity we have is to create a new paradigm while we're standing in the old one. Not an easy thing.
Well, all right, so we're standing in the old life, the old paradigm, and what is that paradigm? What is a paradigm? Let's start with that for folks who may not be familiar with that idea. And what is the one we're standing in?
The paradigm we're standing in collectively around our globe is a world that we've created from the Industrial Revolution.
Okay.
A way of living that most of us have either standing on the side of being empowered by it or being denied through it. There are those of us who have gained a lot, so it seems, from the Industrial Revolution. And there are those of us that have lost everything as a result of the Industrial Revolution.
No, that's interesting to explore. Yeah. Who appear to have gained a lot, and I would guess we probably would count ourselves in that in some ways.
Yes.
Right? I mean, we have a mobility, we have health, we have longer lives, we have often healthier food, acquaintanceship with many more people on the planet.
Yes, the Industrial Revolution has sponsored and fostered the growth of lots more people on the planet.
That's true.
And consequently, we have too many people on the planet, more than the planet can sustain. So in many ways, people see growth as the thing that needs to happen. And what we've come to realize is that unwise growth, unmeasured growth, unstewarded growth.
Well, rampant growth here
doesn't work very well.
Well, it's cancerous, right?
Totally.
It's killing off the host, which is our planet and its resources.
Right.
Which, of course, we're seeing, and that Industrial Revolution, of course, was primarily fueled by fossil fuels.
Yes.
Right? Coal, oil, natural gas. Yes. Here we are with it saying, well, we're going to run out here.
Yes, we're going to run out.
Not immediately with coal, for example, but there's an end in sight here.
Yes.
And certainly global warming would say, stop now.
Definitely.
We've way tilted that out of balance.
Yes, definitely. And what we've come to realize is that the Industrial Revolution has fostered the growth for many people. There are many people who have done very well as a result of that, at the expense of many others who haven't.
Let's look at that. Folks whose ways of life, cultures have been decimated as we just go in and exploit the resources.
Take the resources out, yes. Many of our third world countries, maybe all of them, if you do the research on that, shows that how they got there, many of the third world countries are the richest in natural resources of the whole planet.
And we have just gone and sort of
and
raped,
taken
if you will. We've just take what we wanted and left them basically decimated.
Yes, a wonderful, wonderful resource to read about that is a book by David Edwards called Burning All Illusions. Burning All Illusions. Yes. He's a Brit who has an amazing understanding of what we were doing back in the 50s when we were running around trying to stop communism and going into these countries and taking the resources. And it's amazing.
Under the rubric of we're just going to make the world safe for democracy or whatever.
Yes.
Ooh. Yeah. Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's a really good way to kind of look at where this came from. How did we move in to this track?
And also, part of what those of us who think we have gained a lot, there's also some of what we've lost: our family connections, our social web, our networks, our sense of home, our roots, whatever.
Yes. In our advanced technological age, we've become products of isolation. We sit alone at our computers and at our televisions, and things don't change. And it actually serves the powers that be for us to remain isolated.
Yeah, I read recently from Barry Lopez, the notion is that divorce is essential for the corporate world because it means more separate households that you get to furnish.
Exactly.
So let's shift for a bit into, okay, here we are standing in that reality, the growth economy, the industrial world, more and more products, more and more people, resources depleting, planet warming. What's the other paradigm, the other worldview that we're shifting towards?
Well, what we're realizing is that this rampant growth, as you suggested, hasn't served us. That we're not clear about, we don't understand what it is, or we haven't understood, or we've made choices that have been based on greed and how can I get more and more, and to the expense of those that have less and less, of realizing that, wow, this isn't the way to steward our planet. This is not going to work. And what I've come to realize in traveling around the country and talking to a lot of people about what are we going to do, getting clear on what's happening, the problems and the dangers, and what can we do about it, having the opportunity to visit lots of people that get it, that have the vision to see what's coming and want to make changes, to realize that along with getting clear about renewable energy, about how we're going to grow our own food, save our seeds, doing the things that we need to do to sustain ourselves through this change and through these this upheaval that we're experiencing.
The challenge.
The challenge, absolutely, is to use the challenge to be an opportunity to get clearer on who we are individually.
Doesn't that seem sort of, I'm going to be a little devil's advocate, isn't that selfish? I mean, if we only take care of who we are and don't take care of some of the other outside things, will we survive? Will the next people survive? Not that I believe that, but some people are going to ask it from that framework.
Absolutely. Well, you know, for me, Janae, what I've come to realize is when Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world, what I get is that it's me getting clear on who I am and who I choose to be into relationship with all this. As I get more clarity on that, I come up with the answers and the choices that lead me to create the sustainable world, that I get clear on my emotional, psychological, spiritual sustainability, that I come and make choices that are sustaining for the world, for you, my neighbor, my family, the people next door, in the next city, in the next state, in the next country.
So give me a specific, let's get down to a specific example of what you mean by who you are in that statement, you know, who you are, because you're obviously, that can sound very abstract. So an example, specific on that. What do you mean?
Let's say you use the example of divorce. And the whole idea of relationship, that's a really good way to get clear on who I am, is the idea of, say we're in a relationship, you're sitting over there, I'm sitting over here, and we have this relationship, and we're also mirrors and reflectors for each other.
Okay.
That I get to see, by my experience of you, I get to see who I am from over there. And that's the richness and the opportunity in a relationship. Makes it lots of fun, also can be a nightmare at times.
It's like, I didn't think I was that way.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, so very often it's in a relationship, it's who I am and how I choose to show up and the choices that I make in relationship to you, in response to you, in reaction to you, that the growth comes for me, not because of you in the relationship, but how I'm showing up in the relationship with you.
What you're saying is we have to think of ourselves not just as reactors, but as actors. We can choose to respond with closing down, refusing to hear, making you the bad guy, all kinds of ways of responding to not just relationship, but the situations around us. Or we can open up or start to hear or realize I can indeed choose different responses. Am I with you here on what you're meaning?
Yes, because it's my belief and my heart tells me that everything that's going on in the world, that nothing exists to take us down. It all exists to lift us up. It's the perception that makes the difference.
So that would be, what you would be saying here from that worldview is we're not in, there's not a force in the world that's here to just wipe off the planet and say this is the end of the experiment or whatever, that the forces in the universe are here to support us becoming more aware, more nurturing, more compassionate.
Yeah.
I mean, those are my words, but is that what you're
Yes,
meaning?
and that brings us around to that whole topic of God. And the whole idea that we have over generations, this belief in a wrathful, angry God, punishing God, that there could be such a thing, that there could be this God that's sitting there going like this.
Particularly
sort of
in the Hebraic tradition, the Western traditions, we do have that.
We do, and we've assigned God, a God, goddess, the all that is, however you know that energy, with human qualities.
Yes.
A needy God that needs something from us and is mad because he can't get it. And when we boil it down to that, it becomes kind of silly, but it's been an issue that has been huge for us in all the conflicts that have ever occurred on this planet. When they boil down, when you look at the essence, it has to do with a belief in God. It's my God, it's not your God, my God's right, and because of that, I have the right to kill you and take your land and your possessions. And it's been a huge issue. Look at our world today.
Is right
it's
now.
huge.
I mean, here we are, you know.
There's only one God, it's mine, it's not yours. The way you believe is wrong, and that gives me the right to hurt you. And I can believe that because I have a belief in a God that will hurt me and you. As if God would have a need to ever do that.
So for those who don't even think of it as God, the whatever,
nature, life,
nature, right?
joy, love, however you know and experience that energy.
So that's part of how you choose to frame that's a different paradigm. You're looking at a loving universe, a supportive universe. And therefore, how would you frame this sort of this peak oil climate change challenge? You know,
well, what it does, the challenge, what it does is, my belief is that we're painting ourselves into a corner, forcing us to create the life and the planet we always wanted anyway.
Ooh, nice.
My heart tells me, yeah, that's what we're doing.
So describe the planet we want to have anyway, the life we want to have anyway. What do you vision?
The one that believes in that the whole opportunity is for us to live and grow, cherish ourselves, each other, that it wasn't about dominion over, but stewardship of and with.
So we become cooperators, partners with the natural world. So that's no longer, what I hear in that is no longer, if you will, dead resources, objects.
Yes.
People are not objects, actually. You're talking about relationship with everything.
With all of life. And all of life is about functionality, adaptability, and sustainability.
Functionality, adaptability, sustainability.
Yeah. Conversations with God, the foundation that I work for, talks about that life's all about that, functionality, adaptability, and sustainability.
Say a little bit more about what those are, particularly framed with this new paradigm that you're talking about.
That if you look at any aspect of life, that life has a function to live and grow. And if, say, for example, you're a plant and you're sitting in a window and you don't have enough sun, you'll notice that a plant will start to lean towards where it gets more sun. It will adapt to sustain itself.
So here we're talking not about runaway growth, as we did earlier in the conversation, sort of the runaway beyond the carrying capacity, say. We're talking about an appropriate level of growth.
Yes,
is that right?
Living close to the earth. Feeling who we are with the earth. You know how in nature, animals in the wild, when there aren't enough resources around them, they won't have any offspring or very few.
That's right.
Because they have a sense and awareness of what's going on around them. So they don't populate the area with too many offspring who then there aren't resources for.
So that would imply both that we've lost touch with that as animals, and actually that the fossil fuels that we've that we've managed to sort of have this big bubble of energy and people has and the industrial world has enabled us to sort of lose touch with those sense of appropriate limits, biological limits, inner limits that and nature works with. Yeah, or just awareness, so that rather than limits, it becomes about feeling into what's really happening in this moment. There was a lot of water this year. There wasn't a lot of water this year, so let's respond knowing that, awareness of that. The snowpack wasn't enough this year, wasn't a lot. So that means let's be conserving what we have because we're aware of what's going on around us. That's a whole different thing when your water comes through a pipe and your electricity comes through a pipe and you have no idea, a conduit, and you have no idea where back there, where it came from. Where it came from. And the responsibility we have to sustain the supply, the resource of where it came from and how it works. The pipeline, if you will, that brings it to us, that gets corroded or leaks or whatever, or the source from which it's taken.
What is our responsibility for that to replenish it? You know, our Native Americans that were here and Native populations and indigenous tribes all around the planet live very close to the earth, and they never took anything from the earth that they didn't replace in some way. They understood that symbiotic relationship that we have with life itself.
The folks that we've been meeting in permaculture talk about that as closing the loop.
Yes.
So there is no waste, because there is no waste in nature. So everything that we call waste should be the feedstock for something else. So our manure becomes the materials for the new plants, and somehow the people who know how to make plastics and computers, we need to find ways that those come back, and replenish, and so we're reusing and back in the cycle again.
Definitely. And so circling back from what we were saying before is the way that we can grow into having that sense or awareness of the whole and of life itself is having an awareness of who I am and paying attention and listening. What is my body telling me? What is my heart telling me? What am I experiencing in relationship to you, to this experience, to those who are listening to us? Who am I in this moment, and what do I choose for the next moment that will serve the next moment from where I've walked in the moment before? And it's from that awareness in myself that I can then make sustainable and responsible choices for the collective.
If you are looking at how do you make the connection between that in yourself, that awareness in yourself, and those appropriate choices for sustainability, you must define who, it seems to me, who you are in a much broader way than this little consuming ego.
Well, it starts for me as in actually a more intimate way, listening within. One of the things I practice, and I share with others often, is a little exercise that sounds really simple, but it can be very difficult to do. And that is in the morning when I get up, before I brush my teeth and wash my face, is look into the eyes that look back at me in the mirror and connect those eyes with all that is. And if I wondered what the all that is, or the God or the goddess or life looks like, it's looking back at me through those eyes. And there are times when I resist that completely. It's like, oh, I can't do it. But if I can begin to support that relationship, I start to have a greater sense of me and a greater appreciation for me and acceptance of me. And that allows me to step into the relationship you're talking about.
I would see that. If you're going to connect, if you're going to say, I am in a relationship with all that is, all that ever has been since this planet, this universe, the first atoms, whatever, the beginnings. It's a bigger, you take a deep breath on that one, I would imagine sometimes, that all that we know in time and space. Now I'm going to drag us over to a practical level kind of thing also. You've taken on coordinating a post-carbon group, a group that in Ashland that is looking at how do we respond to those physical changes inside and out. How do we facilitate that transition from the old paradigm to the new? And actually, we didn't cover this piece. It's about standing in the old paradigm, we started there, while moving towards a new paradigm of stewardship and sustainability. And there's this real split. I mean, there's this sort of crazy making. It's like you go out into the world and everybody's, we're going everywhere in our cars, and and people are shopping totally, and it's like using up all the materials and so on. And yet we're talking about a different story, a different kind of, how do we keep our balance in that?
Well, that's the whole thing. It's like part of being a part of the Post Carbon Institute here in Ashland, which is our localization program here, is a good example of that is going to a meeting at the Jackson County Sustainability Network. We're talking about how it is that we can use renewable energy here in Ashland, how we bring that here, how we sustain that, support that. And then we go home and stop at the local grocery store, which trucks in every kind of possible thing imaginable that we can buy and expect to have there any time of the day or night.
Yes. And we probably all drove in separate cars.
We probably drove all in separate cars and go home and sit down and turn on the boob tube and,
or the computer,
and the computer. And so we are living in the same old paradigm while we're envisioning the new paradigm. And it can be crazy making. And part of what we want to do here in Ashland is support emotional, psychological, and sustainable and spiritual sustainability, as well as how we do food, how we do renewable resources, and all of that. because it can be crazy making. It can feel like, who am I and how do I fit into this picture?
And am I the only one that's sort of trying to save resources of water, say,
and
or you know,
and all
use
you have to
less?
do is sit down with the family at Thanksgiving and Christmas and realize you're the black sheep in the family.
Yes,
Or people
yes.
look at you and think, what are you doing? Look around, everything's fine.
And that's a
Yeah.
big part of what's going on in our culture now. It's
Yeah.
like, no, I mean, technological, they'll fix it. We've had technologies that, you know, they'll solve it. There'll be something that will pop up.
Yep, their families have to survive too, so they will figure out the answers, so we don't need to worry.
That's right.
And that's the message. And if you do watch television, their messages all the time about be afraid and everything's fine. We've got it covered. Be afraid, but we have it covered.
And you need us
And
because
you
we
need
have
us
it
because
covered.
we've got the
Because if we
answers.
didn't take care of this, you definitely would have to be even more fearful.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and all you have to do is look at the reruns of what happened at Katrina with the hurricane in New Orleans to see that the cavalry may not be coming. And so we have to learn to do it ourselves. And being the messenger of that in a community can feel like a very lonely place to be. It's like from the Bible, when Noah was building the ark, everybody thought he was crazy.
Absolutely. And that's what I think many relocalization folks, you know, we are little voices crying out in the wilderness in a way, saying, change is coming, be ready, get ready. We need to do it, and we need to do it together.
Yes.
So you're talking about supporting those change agents.
Change agents, trailblazers. That's who we are. And it's a responsibility, and we have to support each other. Part of the sustainability is sustaining ourselves through the change, through these times. Because as people become aware that have been resistant and in denial of what's happening, they're going to be angry and they're going to be afraid.
Yes.
And this world is not going to be easy in that transition. So how do we stay clear about who we are and what we know to be true and what our hearts are telling us in the midst of all that? And that's what seems important to me is as I get clear about looking in those eyes in the mirror and listening within, because as things get more noisy out there, and it gets the more clamor and loud and it's not clear where to go, I want to have exercised this muscle with listening within. Because this is the voice that will never let me down.
I was going to say, and that's the one that's going to go with you everywhere.
Everywhere.
Because ideas and opinions are going to, you know, and we're going to up and down, and, you know, the boat's going to rock.
Yeah, exactly.
But
It's
you've
the
got a
voice
center core.
and the being that's been with us always and will be with us always. So it's invested in us. So that connection becomes more and more important. So however we know, whether it's looking in our own eyes, whether it's meditation, prayer, self-reflection, walking in nature, whatever that is that strengthens that connection within, becomes more and more important.
Particularly, of course, in those rocky times. I love that
Yeah.
notion of supporting the pioneers, the trailblazers.
Yes.
Because I think that many of them, and we've only got about 3 minutes left here, many of them are often strong at going solo, you know, are taking that leadership role, stepping into those shoes, but need to really have others that can hold them when we need some reality checks,
Yes.
some support.
Some connection, a reality check that, I'm not crazy.
Yes.
And sometimes it's a coping mechanism to get really busy and stay out there and keep doing and organizing and all of that, not managing our feelings about how it feels to be in this, what feels like a crazy time at times. To check in with our feelings, how are we feeling? To create a support system where we can safely share, wow, I'm feeling crazy today. I feel like I'm the only one doing this today. Is there anybody out there? Does anybody get this? Am I the only one? And to be able to touch in with some people, and that support system may be small. It may be 1, 2, or 3 people at first. Even in a group, it may be small pockets or groups or circles of energies.
Not everybody is doing that role, and to see that as one of the functions of a relocalization group or an outpost is to have some folks that are your reality anchors or your emotional mirrors that just support those who are doing the action as well.
Yes, because straddling both paradigms, that's where we're wanting to move while we're still living in where we've come from, is not easy. It's not easy. I use the example, and this will relate for women, it's like a girl riding a boy's bike. That can be painful.
Yeah, particularly when it gets bumpy.
Definitely.
It can be bone jarring, yes, and bruising.
So all the cushioning, all the cushioning that we can offer ourselves and each other becomes really important in these times.
You are giving us such good, nurturing advice. I think that we've done a lot of peak moment shows on what people are doing in the active and the physical world. And I think that reminder is that that's not going to be sustainable fully unless we are also doing the inside with one another and with ourselves.
Yeah, it's really, really important. And I love the opportunity to be able to remind us, myself, you, and those who might be listening, of looking inside first, being the change. I really believe that was a prophetic statement.
It had to be, because he didn't say, do the change you want to see happen.
Yeah.
Of course, Gandhi came from the inside
Yeah.
in his work. He had that core and that vision of what the values were that met those life-affirming values. And that's what I'm hearing from you as well, that this is indeed opportunity. Challenging times, opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Conversations with God, the organization that I work for, a message from one of the wonderful books in CWG is, if we don't go within, we go without. And I find that is so applicable in this challenge and opportunity time that we have.
We go without.
Yeah.
And that's what people fear most, is going without.
And so we reach out there for the answers when it would be really useful to start in here.
Joanna, thank you. Thanks for joining us on Peak Moment, for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you, Janae. It's been wonderful.
You're watching Peak Moment, community responses for a changing energy future. I'm Janaea Donaldson. Join us next time.